Saṁyutta Nikāya, the Connected Discourses, Sagāthāvagga Saṁyutta, Yakkha Saṁyutta, Connected Discourses with the Yakkhas, Indaka Vagga, group of discourses starting with Indaka, Suttas 10.1 to 10.12. Sutta number 10.1, Indaka Sutta, Discourse to Indaka. I have personally heard this. Once upon a time, the Blessed One was residing at the top of Indakuta mountain, where a Yakkha by the name of Indaka used to live. Then, one day, the Yakkha Indaka decided to approach the Blessed One, and as he did so, he began speaking in verse and said, "The Buddhas declare that there's no living essence or a soul to be found in form itself. But how is it that this body, which is form, manifests and comes to be? How is it that one's liver and even skeleton holding up this body come to be formed? And what would be that which keeps holding and grabbing on to a mother's womb?" And the Blessed One replied by saying, "What forms first is the kalala, the drop of embryo. Right after, the abuddha starts budding and multiplying. Then, from that, bodily tissues begin forming, which come together as compact lumps of identifiable flesh. It's from that point on that extremities form, with the distinct shape of the body manifesting, along with head hair, body hair, and the nails. Meanwhile, all the nutrition that is consumed by the mother, with the food and drinks that she takes in, all that also goes to benefit and nourish the body that's forming within her very own womb." Sutta number 10.2, Sakkanāma Sutta, the Yakkha called Sakka. Once, while the Blessed One was living at the Vulture's Peak in Rajagha, a Yakkha by the name of Sakka went and approached him, and began addressing the Blessed One while speaking in verse. "Now that you've freed yourself from all those ties that bind, becoming fully released from all kinds of attachments, perhaps it's not such a good idea to be teaching and talking to others, O recluse." And the Blessed One replied by speaking in verse. "Whoever wants to help or teach another, O Sakka, if and when any sense of affection were to arise somehow within the heart of that wise teacher who instructs out of compassion, then he simply must not allow his heart to either become perturbed or agitated. However, in the case of the one whose mind is fully freed and purified already, while teaching and giving instructions to others, there's no possibility for him to either get attached somehow or get tied up into a bind, whether as a result of his compassion or his sympathy." Sutta number 10.3, Sūciloma Sutta, Sūciloma, the needle-haired Yakkha. I have personally heard this. At one time, the Blessed One resided in Gaya, near the stone-carved platform within the domain of Sūciloma, the needle-haired Yakkha. Then it so happened that both Sūciloma, the needle-haired Yakkha, and his friend Khara, the Yakkha, were passing by the place where the Blessed One was staying. Then Cīrā the Yakkha turned to his friend Sūciloma and exclaimed, "Look, there's a recluse." And Sūciloma the Yakkha replied, "That's not a recluse. He's a fake, a wannabe recluse. Now wait here. I will prove it to you, whether he is in fact a true recluse or merely someone pretending to be one." Then the Yakkha Sūciloma approached the Blessed One and began leaning towards the Blessed One with his body. But the Blessed One immediately pulled away from him, at which the Yakkha Sūciloma remarked to the Blessed One, "Recluse, are you afraid of me?" The Blessed One replied, "No, friend, I do not fear you. However, your touch has the stench of evil." Sūciloma the Yakkha then said, "I will ask you a question, recluse, and if you do not answer me, I will invade your mind and drive you insane, or split your heart apart, and grab you by the feet, and fling you onto the farther shore of the river Ganges." The Blessed One then replied, "Friend, in this world of devas and humans, together with its maras, brahmas, the community of recluses and religious practitioners of all kinds, I do not see anyone who could be able to invade my mind, or drive me insane, or split my heart apart, or grab me by the feet, or fling me onto the farther shore of the river Ganges. Nevertheless, you may go ahead and ask whatever you wish to ask." Then the Yakkha Sūciloma addressed the Blessed One in verse. "Where do lust and hatred originate? Where do aversion, delight, and fear originate? From where do thinking and thoughts arise and pour out, much like when small boys are set loose, gushing uncontrollably out, as if they were a flock of crows?" And the Blessed One then replied to the Yakkha Sūciloma by speaking in verse. "Lust and hatred originate here in this body. The same also with aversion, delight, and fear. Thinking and thoughts, too, arise and pour out from this very body, much like when small boys are set loose, gushing uncontrollably out, as if they were a flock of crows. Born out of self-adoration, they all arise of oneself, spreading out in all directions, longing to make contact with pleasurable experiences through the 6 sense doors they reach out. Much like the Maluva creepers born from a banyan tree's trunk, as they spread everywhere in the forest. Now listen carefully, O Yakkha. Those who know and understand this process as it really is, quickly apply themselves to abandon this tendency. And in doing so, they traverse this flood that is so difficult to cross, one that has never been crossed before, and by crossing it, they are never to be reborn again." Sutta number 10.4. Maṇibhadda Sutta. The Yakkha Maṇibhadda. Once upon a time, the Blessed One was living in the Magadhan region, while staying at the Manimalika shrine, which was known to be inhabited by a Yakkha named Maṇibhadda. Then, one day, the Yakkha Maṇibhadda approached the Blessed One, and began speaking in verse in his presence, and said, "Every moment is favorable indeed for the one who knows how to live mindfully. This because he who stays with sati throughout inexorably finds himself drenched in gladness within and without. Thus, the mindfully aware person single-handedly enhances the quality of his very life, enjoying it while being uplifted with serene contentment each and every day, meanwhile freeing himself from all sense of hatred and animosity. And the Blessed One replied by saying, Every moment is favorable indeed for the one who knows how to live mindfully. This because he who stays with sati throughout inexorably finds himself drenched in gladness within and without. Thus, the mindfully aware person single-handedly enhances the quality of his very life, enjoying it while being uplifted with serene contentment each and every day. However, he would still need to free himself from all sense of hatred and animosity, which is why he must continue practicing diligently both day and night, while maintaining the inner flavor of harmlessness in both heart and mind, exuding loving kindness through his thoughts, words, and actions too, for all beings, whoever and wherever they might happen to be. So, it is with the additional help of this training that the mindful person soon frees himself from all sense of hatred and animosity. Sutta number 10.5 Sānu Sutta. Sānu, the possessed. I have personally heard this. Once, while the Blessed One was living at the monastery offered by Anathapindika in Savathi's Jeta's park, there happened to be a certain female lay disciple who discovered that her son, Sānu, had become possessed by a Yakkha spirit who did not want to let go. Utterly distraught and lamenting her son's state, that lay female disciple began tearfully reciting the following verses, while speaking them out loud in desperation, as her son Sānu slept. I have personally heard from the noble ones how during the fortnightly Uposatha, whether on the 8th, the 14th, or the 15th, or any of these specially significant days, all those who commit themselves to living with purity, leading the holy life fully in all its 8 principles of virtue, are protected, whereby no being or Yakkha would dare to come by to try and invade or harass anyone. But today, I see that that's not the case. For obviously, my son, Sānu, has been invaded by one who's been toying with him ever since. Then, another Yakkha, who was aware of the female lay disciple's woes, on listening to her words, began addressing her with compassion while speaking these words. The words you heard from the noble ones are indeed true. How during the fortnightly Uposatha, whether on the 8th, the 14th, or the 15th, or any of these specially significant days, all those who commit themselves to living with purity, leading the holy life fully in all its 8 principles of virtue, are protected, whereby no being or Yakkha would dare to come by to try and invade or harass anyone. Therefore, when your son Sānu wakes up, speak to him the following words, which serve as a strong reminder to all those who hear them. For these statements are well known to all Yakkhas everywhere, and truly serve as powerful reminders for us too. Do not engage in any evil or bad actions, whether they're done secretly or out in the open. For if you do go ahead and continue doing evil or bad actions of any kind, then there won't be a single place left for you in the entire existence, for you to run to or try to hide. No way for you to escape the suffering that's waiting for you. Not long after, Sānu, the son of the female lay disciple, woke up, and on seeing his mother still weeping, began speaking to her by uttering these words: "Mother, it is when someone has died and gone that they weep for him, or when someone, although being alive, has gone missing and can't be found, that they go on crying and lamenting for him in their loss. But what is the reason for your tears? For I am both here in front of you, alive and in the flesh. Yet you shed these tears for me." And in responding to her son's question, the lay female disciple spoke and said, "Indeed, my dear son, for it is when someone has died and gone that they weep for him, or when, although being alive, one has gone missing and can't be found, that they go on crying and lamenting for him in their loss. But when, having already gone forth and left all sensual desires behind, one returns and rejoins us householders in order to live this lower life again, it is truly for such a one who's lost that one weeps in lament, because such a person is indeed lost, for while being alive he is already dead, my son. My sweet child, you've already rescued yourself from the hot embers that burned you, but now you want to dive right back into their hell. My son, after having pulled yourself out of the blazing inferno, why would you go ahead and foolishly throw yourself back in? My venerable child, fearlessly and without looking back, rush forward and don't think twice. Who cares about others' opinions or what they think, when you've courageously left behind everything, seeking to save yourself from the merciless fires, never to be burned by them ever again? So why wish to return back here, plunging yourself into the blazing fires once again? Sutta number 10.6. Piyaṅkara Sutta. Young Piyaṅkara, the Yakkha. Once, the Venerable Sariputta was living in Savatthi, at the monastery offered by the lay male disciple Anathapindika at Jeta's Park, when one early morning he began reciting verses of the Dhamma, as the sun's first rays were beginning to break through the darkness of the early morning sky. Then the mother of the Yakkha, Piyaṅkara, who was nearby, quickly turned to her little child, and with a soothing voice cautioned him as she whispered the following words in verse. "Quiet, my dear Piyaṅkara. The Bhikkhu is reciting verses from the Dhamma. Don't make a sound. Perhaps, on hearing even a portion of it, we may come to learn and understand their depth of meaning. Thus, by practicing what it instructs, we will indeed gain much by putting it into practice. Intentionally, not harming any living beings, while always speaking what is true, we shall now keep training ourselves in living with purity, behaving with virtue in this manner from now on, we live by following a mode of conduct that will finally free us from this goblin realm. Sutta number 10.7. Punabbasu Sutta, young Punabbasu and his siblings. Once, the Blessed One was staying in Savatthi, dwelling at the monastery donated by Anathapindika at Jeta's Park. This took place at a time when the Blessed One was instructing, encouraging, motivating, and inspiring the bhikkhus gathered around him by giving them a talk on the Dhamma, speaking to them on Nibbana. Now, as those bhikkhus were intently focused, with their hearts entirely absorbed in the Dhamma talk they were receiving from the great teacher, they carefully listened to every bit of Dhamma they heard, not letting any of it to somehow slip their attention. Meanwhile, observing all this was the mother of the Yakkha, Punabbasu, who quickly gathered her children around her by instructing them as she whispered, "Hush now, my little Uttarika. Sit still and be quiet, Punabbasu. I'm trying to listen to what the great teacher, the Buddha, is saying. Let's pay attention to the Dhamma being taught by the king of the Dhamma himself." I remember the first time I heard the Blessed One as he explained how Nibbana is freedom itself, the release from all shackles and chains that bind. Since that very moment, I fell in love with his teaching, and the beautiful Dhamma he revealed. He explained so clearly how in existence one may have sons that are so precious and dear, or having a husband you marry whom you truly cherish and love. However, ever since that moment, I realized something even more priceless than these precious things. I saw how the appreciation and love for the Dhamma I developed by following it as my path truly enhanced the very meaning and purpose of life for me. After all, no matter how much love there is in one's heart for their son or husband, and no matter how beloved and valuable they may be to oneself, they still cannot free one from suffering really. This because despite them being so beloved and cherished, they still cannot even reduce, let alone completely liberate living beings from the suffering and grief they bear in their hearts, which, however, listening to this Dhamma actually can and does liberate, most certainly indeed. Drenched in the sorrowful woes that existing itself brings, inescapably tied to the facts of getting old and dying, as long as I have the opportunity still, I'm going to continue to listen to the Dhamma, being instructed by none other than the Buddha himself, this lovely teaching to which he awakened himself to, and now shares it with us too, which is why I'm going to keep listening to it so attentively. So don't make a sound now, you hear? Punabbasu. Then her son, the Yakkha Punabbasu, softly replied to his Yakkha mother by saying, "But, mother dear, I'm not talking at all. Neither is Uttarika. We're both keeping quiet, you see. So please continue paying close attention to the Dhamma, for listening to the true teaching is indeed so lovely. After all, it is for the fact that we have yet to understand it properly, mother, that we continue to live in misery. Truly, being the one who brightens the worlds of both devas and men alike, shining his light upon the entire confused generations of beings who are lost without him in their utter blindness. It is the Buddha who bears his very last form, who keeps sharing and teaching the lovely Dhamma continuously. On hearing her son's words, the Yakkha mother of Punabbasu then responded happily while speaking these words in verse. How lovely it is to be the mother to such a son, who's wise indeed. My son, whom I lovingly carried in me and breastfed so tenderly. Ah, it's truly such a joy to see how my dear child lovingly appreciates this beautiful Dhamma too, that the supremely awakened Buddha himself carefully instructs. It's such a delight, my dear Punabbasu, such a wonderful occasion to be happy indeed, for today it's finally happened. I too can see. So know this, my lovely child Punabbasu, that now your own mother also has at last broken free, for she too can the noble truths finally see. Sutta number 10.8. Sudatta Sutta. Sudatta. Once, the Blessed One was residing in the Sītavana forest in Rajagaha, when the householder Anathapindika, who at that time had not yet met the great teacher, came to Rajagaha as well, to tend to some business. Now on that very same day, when the householder Anathapindika heard the words, "A Buddha has finally appeared in the world," being spoken by those around him, he became immediately filled with impatience in wanting to speedily go and see the Buddha himself. So, although pondering to rush out quickly to meet the Buddha, however, he began considering how the time may not be appropriate, while thinking to himself, "It is too late now to go see the Blessed One, as the day has already ended, unfortunately. I think it's better to go and see the Blessed One tomorrow morning instead." In this manner, Anathapindika, the householder, spent his night, fully immersed in thought about the Buddha and the fact that he was going to see him the following morning. However, his excited anticipation kept waking him up all through the night, until, after the third time, he decided to just get up and simply go to meet the great teacher. And he did, but without knowing whether the gates would be open before sunrise for him to leave the city walls. As he approached the main entrance to the charnel grounds, non-human beings unlocked the gate for him, giving him the opportunity to reach his destination. Now, as he found himself leaving the city walls, suddenly he was surrounded by pitch blackness, with no more sources of light for him to see where he was going. Soon after, however, Anathapindika became petrified with tremendous fear, as he felt such intense terror that the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He suddenly began to reconsider whether he should just turn around and rush back to the city. It was then that the Yakkha Sivaka, residing in that charnel ground, while still hidden from sight, started speaking these words to Anathapindika, the householder, in verse. Not the marching of 100,000 elephants, nor the rushing of 100,000 racing stallions flying through the land, nor that of a fast-speeding 100,000 horse-drawn military chariots, nor the beauty of 100,000 beautiful young women, fully adorned with all their finery, makeup, and jewelry. None of these could possibly equal even 1/16th of what each one of your steps would mean right now as you continue walking. So walk, O householder. Do not fret, nor look back. March on, undaunted, and fearlessly follow your heart, O householder. Truly, there's only one way for you to go, and that is straightforward, as you carry on with fortitude, without ever looking to go back whence you came. Then, suddenly the darkness that surrounded him quickly disappeared, and Anathapindika was able to see his way again, as his fear and terror dissipated and vanished. But not long after, though, it became dark with pitch blackness surrounding him again, and with no more sources of light for him to see his way. Then, for a second time, Anathapindika again became petrified with tremendous fear, as he felt intense terror that the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, leading him to reconsider whether he should just turn around and rush back to the city. And, for a second time, the Yakkha, while still not revealing himself, started speaking these words to Anathapindika, the householder, in verse. Not the marching of 100,000 elephants, nor the rushing of 100,000 racing stallions flying through the land, nor that of a fast-speeding 100,000 horse-drawn military chariots, nor the beauty of 100,000 beautiful young women, fully adorned with all their finery, make-up, and jewelry. None of these could possibly equal even 1/16th of what each one of your steps would mean right now as you continue on walking. So walk, O householder. Do not fret nor look back. March on, undaunted, and fearlessly follow your heart, O householder. Truly, there's only one way for you to go, and that is straightforward, as you carry on with fortitude without ever looking back whence you came. Then, suddenly, the darkness surrounding him again disappeared, and Anathapindika was able to see his way again, as his fear and trepidation immediately disappeared. But not long after, however, it became dark again, with pitch blackness surrounding him, and with no more sources of light for him to see his way. Then, for a third time, Anathapindika again became petrified with tremendous fear, as he felt terrified, where the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, leading him to reconsider whether he should just turn around and rush back to the city. And for a third time the Yakkha, while still remaining hidden from sight, again began to speak these words to Anathapindika, the householder, in verse. Not the marching of 100,000 elephants, nor the rushing of 100,000 racing stallions flying through the land, nor that of a fast-speeding 100,000 horse-drawn military chariots, nor the beauty of 100,000 beautiful young women, fully adorned with all their finery, make-up, and jewelry. None of these could possibly equal even 1/16th of what each one of your steps would mean right now as you continue on walking. So walk, O householder. Do not fret nor look back. March on undaunted, and fearlessly follow your heart, O householder. Truly, There's only one way for you to go, and that is straight forward, as you carry on with fortitude, without ever looking to go back whence you came." Then, suddenly, the darkness he was surrounded by disappeared, and Anathapindika was able to see his way again, as his fears and trepidation completely disappeared. This time, however, Anathapindika pushed himself forward as he rushed towards the Sitavana cool grove hermitage, where he knew the Blessed One to be residing at the time. Meanwhile, the Blessed One, who had already woken up before sunrise and was practicing walking meditation in the early morning open air, saw Anathapindika approaching from a distance. Leaving the walking meditation pathway, the Blessed One came down the slope and sat down on a ready-made seat by the roots of a tree as he proceeded to call to Anathapindika. "Come here, O Sudatta!" Then Anathapindika was startled as he realized, "Ah, the Blessed One is calling me by my first name," and immediately rushed towards the Blessed One and fell at his feet in worshipful appreciation as he paid his respects with joyful, teary eyes, while speaking. "I hope, Bhante, the Blessed One had a good night's rest, sleeping comfortably?" And the Blessed One replied to him in verse, while saying, "The Brahmin always sleeps comfortably. The one whose heart no longer burns with passions for sense pleasures, having relinquished all assets, he remains in cool tranquillity, having attained to Nibbana. Thus he sleeps well, having already set himself free from all attachments that bind. No sorrow or grief could agitate nor overwhelm his heart ever again. By attaining to the ultimate peace of mind, he therefore sleeps in quiet serenity." Sutta number 10.9. Paṭhama Sutta, the Bhikkhuni Sukka, Part 1. Once, the Blessed One was residing in Rajagha's bamboo forest at the squirrel's sanctuary hermitage. This was at the time when the Bhikkhuni Sukka was seated while being surrounded by a large group of people, listening to her instructing them on the Dhamma. Meanwhile, a Yakkha who was a supporter and possessed great adoration and faith in the Bhikkhuni Sukka and in her abilities to speak and teach the Dhamma, was surprised that there were not more people gathered there to listen to the Venerable. So the Yakkha went roaming in Rajagha, street to street, and from one town square to another, and in astonishment began uttering the following in verse. "These people of Rajagha must be drunk on honey wine. What is it with these people and their lack in alertness? They don't show up to listen to Sukkā, while she's teaching on the deathless to multitudes. Thankfully there are those who are wise, who come running to drink it all up as if to gulp down the delicious Dhamma, finding it so life-giving and nutritious, much like parched travelers crossing the desert, finding irresistible the heavy cloud that greets them and drenches them with its rainwater that is so sweet." Sutta number 10.10. Dutiya Sutta, the Bhikkhuni Sukka, Part 2. Once, the Blessed One was residing in Rajagha's bamboo forest at the squirrel's sanctuary hermitage. Now this was at the time when a lay male disciple came and offered food to the Bhikkhuni Sukkā in Rajagha. On witnessing this beautiful act of generosity, a Yakkha, who was a supporter and possessed great adoration and faith in the Bhikkhuni Sukkā, joyfully began racing through Rajagha, flying from street to street and from one town square to another, while jubilantly announcing in verse, "Ah, so many merits he's now accrued, so many benefits are now his, that lay male disciple who's truly wise. For by simply offering a bit of food to Sukkā, the one who's utterly free and released from all bonds, he's given himself a limitless store of merits indeed." Sutta number 10.11. Cīrā Sutta. The Bhikkhuni Cīrā. Once, the Blessed One was residing in Rajagha's bamboo forest at the squirrel's sanctuary hermitage. Now, this was at the time when a lay male disciple came and offered some robes to the Bhikkhuni Cīrā in Rajagha. On witnessing this beautiful act of generosity, a Yakkha, who was a supporter and possessed great adoration and faith in the Bhikkhuni Cīrā, joyfully began racing through the streets of Rajagha, flying from one town square to another, jubilantly declaring in verse, "Ah, so many merits he's now accrued, so many benefits are now his to keep, that lay male disciple who's truly wise indeed. For by simply offering some robes to Cīrā, the one who's utterly free and released from all yokes, he's now given himself a limitless store of merits indeed." Sutta number 10.12. Āḷavaka Sutta. The Yakkha Āḷavaka. This is what I personally heard. Once, the Blessed One was staying in Āḷavi, the region dominated by the Yakkha Āḷavaka. Then the Yakkha Āḷavaka approached the Blessed One and shouted, "Leave this place, recluse!" "All right, friend," replied the Blessed One as he began to leave. "Come back and stay, recluse!" exclaimed the Yakkha Āḷavaka. "All right, then," replied the Blessed One yet again as he returned back. But the Yakkha Āḷavaka called out for a second time, "Leave this place, recluse!" "All right, friend," replied the Blessed One for a second time as he began to leave yet again. "Come back and stay, recluse!" exclaimed the Yakkha Āḷavaka once again. "All right, friend," replied the Blessed One one more time as he returned back. But the Yakkha Āḷavaka for a third time shouted, "Leave this place, recluse!" By saying, "All right, friend," the Blessed One began to leave for a third time yet again. "Come back and stay, recluse!" exclaimed the Yakkha Āḷavaka once more. "All right, friend," replied the Blessed One yet again as he came back. Then, for a fourth time, the Yakkha Āḷavaka shouted, "Leave this place, recluse!" But this time the Blessed One said, "No, friend, I shall not leave. You may go ahead and do whatever you like." "In that case, I will ask you a question, recluse. And if you do not provide me with the correct answer, then I will agitate your heart enough to drive you insane. Or I will split your heart open, grab hold of your feet, and fling you across to the other side of the river Ganges." But the Blessed One said, That won't be possible, friend. For I do not see in this world, with its gods and humans, its Maras and Brahmas, along with its entire population of recluses and Brahmins, anyone capable of agitating my mind, or driving me insane, or being able to split my heart open, or grab hold of my feet to fling me across to the other side of the river Ganges. However, you may go ahead, friend, and ask your question as you wish. Then the Yakkha Āḷavaka addressed the Blessed One by asking in verse, what is the greatest possession one could have? What is it that, when put into practice, brings one the highest joy and happiness? What is the sweetest of all flavors? And what is the best form of living with which one may experience life at its very best? The Blessed One then replied in verse by saying, having faith in one's heart is the greatest possession one could have. The Dhamma that is taught, when put into practice, brings one the highest joy and happiness. Truth is the sweetest of all flavors. Living with wisdom is the best form of living, allowing one to experience life at its very best. Then, asking another question, the Yakkha Āḷavaka said, by what means can one cross over the flood? How can you traverse over the vast ocean? How can one exhaust suffering that is so hard to overcome? And how can one attain to the state of purity? The Blessed One then said, it is with faith that the flood is crossed. Through heedful diligence, one can traverse over the vast ocean. With persistent effort, one can exhaust suffering that is so hard to overcome, and it is through wisdom that one attains to the state of purity. The Yakkha Āḷavaka then asked, but how does one gain wisdom? How can one come to great riches? How can one attain to a good reputation? What is the best way whereby one can attract to himself and keep great friends? And when the time comes at death to leave this world and pass away to another realm, how can there be no mourning or grief? And the Blessed One replied by saying, being grounded in one's faith in the Dhamma taught by the Arahants, fighting against the tendency for negligence while listening to their advice, thereby one gains wisdom through practice, in order to experience for oneself that rare state of Nibbana. Responsibly engaging in actions that are harmonious and appropriate, while working with intelligent determination, brings you great riches. Meanwhile, standing with what is true and just, you attain good reputation. And by having these, along with being generous and giving, you attract to yourself and keep truly great friends indeed. Any householder who has the four qualities of faith, truth, intelligent persistence, and generosity, at the time of death, there cannot remain in his heart any grief or mourning, as he leaves this world and passes away to another realm. You may now go and inquire others also on this, for many are recluses and Brahmins out there, whom you could ask if there could possibly be anything better than truth, self-restraint, generosity, and patience. And then the Yakkha Āḷavaka replied by saying, Now, why would I go and question other recluses and Brahmins any further on this? For today I finally understand what is essential for me to do, and what my future goal must be. Truly indeed, it was for my own sake that Lord Buddha himself came to stay in Āḷavaka. Today I understand how such a great gift will only bear abundant fruits. From now on, I will go from village to village, from town to town, paying homage to the fully awakened Buddha and the incomparably natural excellence of the Dhamma that he teaches. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.